All right, welcome everyone to the introduction of the new California residential purchase agreement. Okay, we want to say hi to everyone. It's hope everyone is having a safe holiday season. Today is a very important meeting because it is going to be focused around the new residential purchase agreement that we are going to be using as a group for the upcoming 2022 year. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping stuff. You might have gotten an email regarding our company Christmas party on the 18th, but we also just sent out a follow-up email. We had already booked the building, we've already booked the casino, we've booked the food, we've booked a lot of things already and actually paid and deposited quite a bit for them. But with the announcement of the new Omicron virus that is now not too far from us, we wanted to make sure that everyone was absolutely safe. And because of that, we've decided to postpone our party until further notice, because we want to make sure that we cannot risk the health of the people in our company. So I just want to let everyone know we've postponed that party just to see if things calm down, and then once we have assurance that hey, it's safe, absolutely safe to have a Christmas party, an event where lots of people are in one spot, then we'll continue with the party. So unfortunately, we have to postpone that party because at the end of the day, your safety means more to us than anything else. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that, so if I don't see or hear from you for the rest of this year, I want to wish everyone a happy holiday season, and let's get ready for an incredible year next year. Okay. Again, we appreciate every one of you in our company, and please, you can always feel free, reach out to me, and I'm always there for you guys on the phone, and anytime you're available, by email, by text, by phone. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, I don't expect this training to go to 1 o'clock. Okay, we put the training time from 11 to 1, but I hope to be able to get through it within the hour and then let you guys all go by noon. This will be recorded, so you go back and reference it. Okay, at the same time though, we are all learning this contract, so anything that I'm training you on is over the general changes in the contract, but then at the same time, it does not mean that all of us don't need to go in there and read the entire contract in detail. And if there's anything that even you saw that I didn't go over, then please point that out to me. Okay, I will have a follow-up training on this contract once we start using it. Okay, once we start using it, I'm going to have follow-up trainings on the contract as well. Okay, so let's go ahead, get started. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm going to open up my screen here. All right, give me a second. I'm going to grab a couple of items. All right, give me a second. I'm going to grab a couple of items here, and then we will get going. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and I'm going to grab something, and I'll be right back. Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to share with you is if you log on, and so I'm going to go over my screen, but I'm going to share with you, if you go to car.org, okay, you don't have to go over it right now, but if you do go to car.org, all right, and if you click on Transaction Center in the car.org area, okay, and then once you click on Transaction Center, if you go to Standard Forms, okay, in the Standard Forms area, and of course, if you sign in, of course, all right, on the Standard Forms area, there's going to be an area on here called Forms Revised and New Form Releases, okay? If I clicked on the Form Revised, okay, you will see there's going to be an area that has the very top area is the 2021 RPA draft. If you click on the one right below it, these are the forms. This is the new RPA form, and there's going to be some new forms. All right, there's going to be some new forms and some forms that are revised, okay, that are major revised forms. So I'm going to let everyone know that the RPA is the major form that is that we're going to be using starting in 2022. Okay, I'm going to give you all some dates. Okay, I'm going to give you all some dates before I click on the form. Right now, if you go into your Zip Forms program, okay, if you go into your Zip Forms program, the contract that you're going to use currently is the old contract, which was revised in 2018. All right, this is the form that you will continue to use until the new forms come out. The new form is set to be officially released on December the 14th, which is a week from today, okay, or a little bit later. Once the new forms are in your Zip Forms, then you can start using the new forms. All right, I know that some companies are not going to be using the new forms until the beginning of the year. I would like to see you using these forms as soon as they come out. All right, they're set to be released on December the 14th. All right, or the week after. Okay, but this is the old form, which is the residential purchase agreement. Okay, the California Residential Purchase Agreement, joint escrow instructions, right here. I'm in my Zip Forms account right now. All right, but okay, but it is not out yet. It's gonna be out next week or the week after. Okay, right now it's not in your Zip Forms yet, so you cannot pull it up on Zip Forms just yet, but it will be out. Just keep an eye out for it. Okay, keep an eye out for it. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is we're going to be able to bounce back and forth between the old form, which is right here, and we'll be able to bounce into the new form. Now, the new form right now is a draft. Okay, in order to look at the draft, when you go into your Transaction Center and you log in, you'll be able to pull up the residential purchase agreement. If you don't have access to Zip Forms, all right, then this form is actually available online. Okay, if you just go online and you Google New California Residential Purchase Agreement, all right, so for those of you who are loan officers but do not have access to these forms, so you can't pull up the form directly on the CAR site because you're a realtor, these forms are also online. So, for example, if I went in there and I Googled New California Residential Purchase Agreement 2021, all right, there are links to the form right here. Here's one of them, RPA December 2021. If you clicked on it, then the form is right here in draft form. Okay, this is readily available online. Okay, I'm just going to open up the one that is directly on from our California Association Realtor site. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open that one up. Okay, and I do so by just clicking on this button right here, and it will open up. This is the new California Residential Purchase Agreement and Joint Escrow Instructions. And today we're going to go over the differences between the old RPA and the new one. Okay, again, I'm going to scroll through. The new RPA is substantially longer than the old. Well, it's longer than the old one. This new form is 16 pages long. Okay, I'm going to scroll through here, and it's 16 pages long. The previous one was only 10. All right, the previous one was only 10. This one is 16 pages long. It's more detailed about many things. Okay, so I just want to show you that. All right, right now this is still the sample form. You will get the final copy of this form in your Zip Forms program. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with the previous contract, this is the previous contract. Okay, this starts at page 1 of 10, and I'm going to scroll down through it. Okay, I'm going to scroll down through it. Okay, right here. Okay, so the previous one without the buyer's inspection advisory was 10 of 10. The new form is, so you'll see 10 of 10. All right, the new form is 16 pages long. Here it is. And so you'll see page 1 of 16. Okay, all right, so let's go over the form real quick. Now, we're going to point out the differences in the form. It took me a while to study this form, and I'm even not an expert on the form just yet. All right, when all of you have time, I would suggest going into this area, printing this out, and when you have time, you know, over the weekend or in the evening, and you have an hour of your time or 2 hours, I say sit down, go through every item of the contract, all right? Read it carefully, because at the end of the day, as realtors, as loan officers, you know, we're responsible for understanding what's on this contract. Because the reason I say that is that everything that's the agreement between the buyer and seller is dictated by what's in writing. It's not dictated by what you say to each other. It's dictated by what's in writing. You know, one of the things I need to remind everyone as we're going through these contracts is no matter what you've spoken to your clients about, or your clients have spoken to the seller about, or what have you, it does not count unless it's in writing, okay? Disclosures that you make, it does not count unless you have it in writing, all right? One of the problems that I see sometimes agents make is that you tell your client pertinent information over the phone. You will disclose information to your clients over the phone. You will talk to your clients about things about the property over the phone. And talking over the phone, there's no proof that you even told them anything. So if there's ever any material information, always disclose it on the phone. Example, let's say you went and did a home inspection, and while you're at the inspection, the other agent or the seller was there, and the seller said to you, oh, this room was done without permit. And then your buyer was standing there as the seller told them this room was done without permit. You need to memorialize that by saying, hey, at the walkthrough, it was told to us by the seller that this room was done without permit. You put it in writing on your agent visual inspection disclosure. They should have put it in writing in their transfer disclosure statement. If the other agent heard it, the other agent should also put it on his agent visual inspection disclosure. You got to have it somehow documented, okay? Because later on, buyer might come back and say, hey, you know what? I just found out this room was done without permit. And then you say, wait, seller told you that. And they go, well, I don't remember the seller ever telling me anything like that. Now I'm going to sue the seller because they never disclosed to me that the room was done without permit. So these are the type of things that anything that has any material fact, anything of importance at all, always has to be in writing. Okay, so let's go through this residential purchase agreement, the new one. All right, you will see that the new residential purchase agreement looks completely different than the old one, right? The main big difference is what you'll see on the first, well, the whole thing is different, but the major difference is on the first 3 pages of the contract itself, okay? You'll see here that it's more organized. Even though it seems more complicated, it's actually more organized than the previous contract, okay? I'm going to point it out to you here, is that in the previous contract, okay, you'll see that it'll start with the information area. You'll see that the agency confirmation is there, okay? And you'll see what the offer is right here. But even though there's little area to put numbers on here on the right-hand side, there's a lot of verbiage here on the left-hand side, okay, that can be confusing. Also, you'll see here, we'll get through to like contingency periods right here. So like, I'll give you an example. Verification is a contingency period. Applications is a contingency period. Contingency removals, contingency periods. And then after that, you have a whole section here on allocation of costs right here, okay? And then it goes to other things, and then you get into more contingency periods on page 6 of the contract. So you see how all these different contingency dates, contingency periods, inspection periods, loan periods, and everything, it is actually scattered throughout the contract, okay? It's scattered throughout the contract. One of the things that the new contract does is it takes the major contingency periods, okay, and it brings it all into one spot, all right? So for example, it takes the details of the purchase agreement, it took out a lot of the word clutter, and it put it into columns and rows. You'll see that this area are the contingency periods. You see that? Contingencies, 17, 17, 17, 17, okay? So it took all the different contingency periods, and again, it put it into columns and rows, all right? There's other compliance fees and other time periods, all right, to do things. And then there is an area for allocation of cost, and there's even a column here for what is included and not included in the home, okay? Previously, all of this was not there. It was scattered throughout the contract. Now, the important details of the offer is right here, okay? I'm circling it. Now you have the contingency periods, which is all right here. And now you have allocation of cost, what's included, not included in the home, all right here. Okay, so even though it's gonna be overwhelming at first, it will be a lot clearer in the future. So let's go ahead and get started with the offer. Unfortunately, I cannot input information into this. I was trying to get a copy of this via zip forms so that I could actually go in there and fill out a contract for you. Okay, I was going to go in there and fill out the contract. Okay, in this case, because the sample that I have is not fillable, we're going to talk about it. Okay, but I would like all of you to practice. Okay, you could download, for realtors especially, you could download this contract. All right, you could download this contract and then hand fill it out yourself so you understand. So filling out for the first time when you have a live buyer is not recommended. Viewing it for the first time on your listing and you receive one of these offers for the very first time is not how you want to do it. Because I'm going to give you everyone an example. We ran into a deal before where the client asked for the agent asked for his buyer a 5% credit from seller towards closing costs. This was a $700,000 deal, and the buyer's agent added this little area on other terms and conditions that seller to credit buyer 5% for closing costs on a $700,000 home. It was $35,000. On the previous contract, do you know where he put it? If you looked at the previous contract and you look at all these terms, there's this item here on page 2, and back then it was actually on a whole different page. It was like way back, but he added it in small print. Seller to credit buyer 5% of purchase price towards closing costs. Okay, check this out. You see how those words can easily be, if you look at the contract as a whole, you see how you can easily miss that area? You see how you can just easily not see that? Well, guess what? The agent went over with his client the offer. It was full price, but the agent did not notice that little area. And the seller, who's not an expert, didn't notice it unless the agent was to point it out. On that deal, the agent made 2.5% on the deal. Okay, actually it was only 2% on the deal, but he ended up having to pay 3% out of his own pocket. Instead of making a $14,000 commission, he not only did not make his commission, he ended up taking $21,000 out of his own pocket, outside of not making the $14,000 commission, because of a little costly oversight like that. Okay, so, and attorney's fees. So that's a disaster in the new contract. All right, I'm not saying that there's nothing that you'll be able to miss, but at least other items and other terms and conditions are all part, see where it says other terms right here? It's all part of the area, and it's not cluttered by a bunch of text. So if they were going to type it here, at least it's more clear. Now, understand that, you know, we do all these by computers. You know, it's easy, again, to not see something. But hey, we're playing with hundreds of thousands of dollars here. Do not see something like that. Okay? Do not see that. All right. Okay, so let's go over the new California residential purchase agreement. All right, so let's start from scratch here. First one, date prepared. Okay, this is the date that you can prepare the contract. This is not the date that the contract was accepted. All right, sometimes agents, you guys make the mistake of looking at that date and counting your timelines based on that date. The date that you count your contingency timelines is based on the date that the offer was accepted. Seems like pretty self-explanatory. Just so you remember, this is only the date that you prepared the contract. It's not the date the offer was accepted. Offer is not officially accepted until we have a mutual contract from both parties, okay? All right. Okay, first one, this is an offer from. This is where you put your client's name, okay? If your client is an entity, then make sure that you put the proper entity signature authorization forms to go with it, all right? This is where you would put all the people signing on. If it's too big, then put at all, and then label the names of all the buyers on an addendum, attach it. Property acquired is the address of the property, in what city, in what county, in what zip code, okay, and the parcel number. All right, so that's easy. All right, the next one is agency disclosure, okay? The agency disclosure, again, that's pretty self-explanatory. All right, the seller's brokerage firm and the buyer's brokerage firm. The seller's brokerage firm is obviously the listing side. The buyer's brokerage firm is the buying side, okay? This is where you put the company's license number and your license number, and then you mark if you're representing seller, buyer, or both, okay? As we review contracts, do not skip out on this area. Do not forget to mark the boxes. Okay, all right, all right. Next one, okay, is the next one is, and on here, C and D basically says you need the disclosure, possible representation of more than one buyer. All right, if you are representing as a dual agent, all right, or there's more than one brokerage, there's another form for that. Okay. So now we're going to go into item number 3. This area is completely different than the previous one. The previous contract looked like this. See how cluttered this all looks, right? You have the purchase price, and then you have, okay, where the deposit's going to go. You have, if there was an increased deposit, you have a box. If it's all cash offer, you have the loan terms, okay? You have any additional financing terms, how much they're putting down, all right? Here, it's very clean, all right? First box, box A, purchase price. It's going to be right here. Agents, get used to looking right here, purchase price, all right? If you put a purchase price, if it's all cash, you would mark this box, all cash, all right? Close of escrow day, number of days after acceptance or on a specific day, okay? I like it when you put a number of days instead of a specific date, all right? This is what I mean by that, is that when you're writing this offer up, and let's say you prepared this offer today, December the 7th, and you say, well, we're gonna need 30 days to close, so I'm gonna put the date is January the 6th, which is 30 days from today. Let me ask you a question. What if it took you 7 days to negotiate the deal and get into contract? There were offers, counter offers, it went back and forth, and it took you 7 days to get into contract. What do you think happens to the January 6th day? Instead of giving yourself 30 days to close, you gave yourself 23 days to close instead. So I recommend that if you're asking for 30 to 35 days to close, then ask for the number of days after acceptance. Okay, don't put a specific date because you're not giving yourself room for negotiations. Okay, next one, expiration of offer. You'll see that previously, you see this item, expiration of offer, in the previous contract. Believe it or not, the expiration day of offer date was all the way down on page 9 of 10. It's all the way down at the bottom of page 9 of 10, expiration of offer, which is insane. Now that has been brought to the forefront. This is where expiration of offer should be. Okay. All right. All right. So here's the expiration of offer. Their expiration of offer is normally 3 days. Okay, after all buyer signatures or a certain date, 5 p.m. On that day. Now, I'm just gonna put a quick note since this is technically not a full training on how and all the aspects of a contract, but if you're in a very hot market, sometimes I give less than 3 days to respond because I don't want them sitting for 2 days and waiting for other offers to come in. Okay, so sometimes I only give them 1 day to respond if I know that they could get this offer in front of their seller. All right. If I know the seller's out of town, then I'll give them the full 3 days. But if I know that they get in front of the seller, then I'll say, hey, I'd like you guys to respond within a day. Okay. But if they respond a little late, it doesn't mean the offer is not valid. All it means is that your buyer doesn't have to honor it if it goes past the expiration date. But if you want to continue to honor it, then continue to honor it. All right. And hopefully on any counteroffer or an addendum, you just extend the date of expiration of offer. Okay. Next one, initial deposit. Okay, the initial deposit. Okay. Now, this one's a little bit interesting because previously on initial deposit, you would put an amount or percentage of purchase price. I'm going to give you a little bit of my thoughts on initial deposit amounts. Don't force your client to put more of a deposit than necessary. Okay, $1,000, $2,000, $2,500, I think is reasonable, unless it's a really big property they're buying. I would not suggest going 1% of purchase price or a huge deposit. Okay, again, when you put yourself in position to put a huge deposit down, if anything goes wrong with the deal, the seller is going to try to keep it. And sometimes they don't have the right to keep it, but they will make it hard for you to get it back if it's a big enough amount. If it's amount $2,000, $3,000, I don't think the seller would still try to fight for that. Okay, I know that when you're in a competitive market, you want to put a bigger deposit to show that you're really serious. But you show that you're serious by communicating that to the listing agent. You show you're serious by giving them a pre-approval letter. You show you're serious by making the offer a good offer. You don't need to show them how serious you are by making a $100,000 deposit. Okay. So again, I never recommend putting more of a deposit than necessary. Now, here's what is sort of different is next to it, it says within this deposit will be made within 3 business days after acceptance by wire transfer. Now, I technically don't agree with how they did this box. The reason I say that is because most of the time, the buyer is not going to sit there and wire transfer the $1,000, $2,000 deposit to the title company. It's actually You know, it's actually sort of difficult. You know, you got to go do the wire, get all the wiring instructions from the title company. It's not easy. So if there's a box, okay, just check the box and put in there personal check, or just put the word check. All right. And then because this is wired, check the box, check. All right. All right. Next one, increase deposit. That doesn't happen a lot. Those are normally on a little bit more sophisticated transactions where there's a long contingency periods, okay? You'll see that on more commercial deals or maybe major renovation projects where they'll say, well, we'll put an initial deposit of X amount of money, and then after 30 days, once we remove all contingencies, we'll increase our deposit by another $10,000, whatever it is. We don't see that a lot, okay? But if you were to do it, that's the section for it. Next one are the loan, all right? First, interest rate, okay? All right, so the first loan is the amount of the loan that you're borrowing, okay? The amount of the loan that you're borrowing, okay? If it's a fixed rate, you don't have to mark this box where it says adjustable, and it says not to exceed, okay, with points not to exceed. All right, so let me explain to you why this portion is important. Okay, now is not the time moving forward to leave things blank. Reason why is that we all working with loan contingencies, saying that you can't get the loan to buy the home, and you can cancel if you cannot get the loan if you have a loan contingency. If you put nothing in here, then you raise a gray area, because they say, well, you know what, you didn't put the parameters of your loan. How do I know that you could not get the loan? Maybe if you would have taken a much higher interest rate, you'd still be qualified. And I'm holding this big fat deposit, and really, even though you have your loan contingency, you didn't put the parameters of your loan. Therefore, I'm not going to let you cancel and get your money back. See, the reason why you put the loan amount and you put interest rate not to exceed with points not to exceed is you're setting your parameters of your loan. Okay, when you set the parameters of your loan, then you can say, hey, look, we tried to go for a loan that's not exceeding 3%. It doesn't exceed 1 point, okay, for fees, and we could not get that loan. And because we could not get that loan, we are canceling and we're exercising our loan contingency rights. Does that make sense? If you leave that area blank, then how can you say, well, we were trying to get a loan and we couldn't get that loan? You didn't even put the parameters of the loan on here. Understood? If your clients are getting an FHA loan or VA loan or any other type of loan, label it here. Because I've had people not put it was an FHA loan. Later on, the FHA declined the loan because the property wasn't in good enough shape for an FHA loan. Well, it wasn't marked FHA in here, and so when they that declined for an FHA loan, they said, well, we're not going to give your deposit back because we didn't know you were going FHA. We thought you were going conventional. Conventional never would have picked on that. You guys understand? So if they're getting a conventional loan, it's already there as the default. If they're getting FHA, VA, mark the appropriate box, okay? If there's additional financing like a second or seller financing, that would be, you would put that in 5C. If the whole thing was seller finance on the first, then put seller financing and add the seller financing addendum here, all right? Okay, 7A, primary is the one that's basically the default, but if this is a second home or investment property, make sure you check those boxes, okay? Balance of down payment is how much is your down payment. Now, this is what I've seen. People confuse down payment for deposit. The initial deposit is up here on item D1. F is the down payment. I have seen people accidentally in the past put the down payment where the deposit is. Okay? That's a big no-no. Make sure you have your numbers in the right spot. And then finally, the purchase price total is here. All right? It should match up here as down here. Okay? Someone asked me, could it not match? Well, sometimes it might not match if you're financing a little bit extra from the seller for repair or what have you. Okay? But normally it should match here and it should match up here. Okay? All right. Initials. Next area is areas for seller credit. Do you see when I gave you the example earlier that that person typed into the contract, all right, an area where the seller was supposed to give 5% towards seller to credit buyer, 5% towards closing costs, and the agent missed it and ended up losing all of his money and taking money out of his pocket. Here, there is a specific area for seller credit, okay? Seller credit to apply to closing costs or whatever it is, okay? Now, there is a section, thank God for seller credit. So make sure you look at this area and not miss something like that. Another thing that I've seen is that sometimes as a buyer, you ask for too much seller credit instead of just giving a better price or lowering the price. I have seen in the past someone ask for, let's say, 6-7% seller credit. And number one, some lenders have a limit in how much the seller is allowed to credit, especially the government. Okay, you could ask for $100,000 in credits, and they might say, okay. But if the government, and you're doing a government financing, they only allow you for half of that, then you say, well, can you give me the rest in cash afterwards? The answer is no. All right. So if you're going to ask for seller credit, make sure it's allowed by your lender, and at the same time, make sure that you don't ask for too much, because they can't just give you cash on the side, okay? All right. Normally, seller credits are applied to closing costs unless you need some kind of credit towards something else. Okay, that's allowed by the lender. Okay, this is where you'd put it. There's an area for other financing terms. All right. Okay, 5B. So now we're looking at other terms, verification of all cash. Okay, default is, okay, is you send your offer in with the verification in the form of bank statements. Now, if you ever send bank statements, okay, black out sensitive information. All right, black out sensitive information, address. If they have certain account information, black that out. Okay. Normally, verification of down payment closing cost is normally in the pre-approval letter. Verification of loan application is normally in the pre-approval letter. Okay, these are the verifications. All right. Now, the reason I want to go over the verifications is the fact that, you know, when you're in a hot market and there's 4 or 5 people fighting for a deal, can you imagine you getting an offer accepted and you fail to provide one of the verifications, and then they get an offer that's substantially higher than your offer coming in, and then they send you a notice to perform, let's say over the weekend, 48-hour notice perform to send us your verifications, and you don't do it, and then they send you a cancellation just because of an oversight. Okay? See, when you're in a competitive situation, you want to protect your escrow. You could easily lose your escrow if you don't pay attention to your dates. Okay, all right. You know, yeah, it's just important. Okay, so make sure these are the verifications. If your loan application letter is a pre-qual, then you would put in there pre-qual. If it's pre-approved, you mark in there pre-approved. If it's fully underwritten, then you mark it fully underwritten. Okay, you know, fully underwritten is TBA, TBDs, to be determined, but it's fully underwritten. Okay, so it just makes it look better if you can let the agent know when you're making this offer, hey, this is the process of us getting the loan. All right. Next one. Okay, you have certain dates to hit. Final verification, assignment request. Okay, and this is very important area, contingency periods. The default for loan contingency is 17 days, unless you removed it or said no loan contingency, which is never recommended. Appraisal contingency, based on appraised value at a minimum purchase price, or a certain amount. Okay, again, it's 17 days. Okay, investigation period is now 17 days. So you'll see a trend here. 17 days is normally the period of time for you to do all your inspections and contingencies. In the past, these days were different. Okay, in the past, loan contingencies were sometimes 21 days, appraisals were 17. It was a little bit all over the place. See, for example, in the previous contract, appraisal was 17 days, but the loan contingency was defaulted at 21 days. Okay, now under this contract, it is all 17 days as the default. If you need more time for the loan, then you could enter in 21 days if you needed more time. Okay, because sometimes these days appraisals are taking quite a bit longer. All right, so again, pay attention to these contingency periods. Loan, 17 days. Appraisal, 17 days. Investigation of property, 17 days. Access to information on the property. Review of the seller documents, okay, 17 days. Preliminary title report, 17 days. Common disclosures, okay, review of any kind of liens, 17 days, okay, all right. It says here 5 days after receipt, whichever is later. That means that if you receive them on the 12th day, it's still 17 days. But if there are things that you didn't receive until the 17th day, then obviously you have another 5 days beyond that 17 days to review it. So let's say you didn't get the preliminary title report until day 17, then you can't just make that decision on that day. You still have 5 days to look through the prelim, make sure that everything is acceptable to you. All right. So that's just that there. Okay. Contingency waiver. Okay. Or removals. This is the form you used. All right. This is the form you use for that. All right. Possession. Okay. This area talks about when is possession delivered. Now, this is very good to me, is that previously, okay, this wasn't very clear. Okay, this wasn't very clear. Okay, normally you would get the keys of the property on the date it records at 6 p.m. Okay, or you ask for a date that you get it. Okay, if it's seller occupied or vacant, okay, the default is close of escrow. Okay, if the seller is going to stay for a week, okay, all right, if the seller is going to pay for a week, if the tenant's going to stay for a week or less, all right, then you could put it right here on that first line. It'll stay for 14 days after close of escrow. If they're going to stay for more than 30 days, then you need seller in possession of property form CAR SIP attached. Okay, if they're staying for longer than 30 days, and you use the RL AS. If they're saying less than 29 days, then you put the SIP form. So those are the forms right here. Okay, if it's tenant occupied, you need to address, all right, who's responsible for this tenant and how that's going to work. How are security deposits transferred over and so forth. All right, you guys got that? Okay, next one. These are the timelines for the seller. Okay, seller needs to give us seller delivery documents. Okay, sign escrow provisions and instructions. Okay, time to pay fees for ordering homeowner documents. Okay, these are things that the seller is responsible for. All right. Next one are the items that are included and excluded. All right. Items excluded and excluded. All right. So I'm going to give everyone a quick second here. I need to go turn something off. Give me 1 minute. 1 minute. Give me 1 second here. Okay. All right, I'm back. So this next item is what's included and excluded. Now it's in a more organized fashion. All right. So let's go over that real quick. And I want everyone to understand something. You know, this is a very important area that people normally don't pay enough attention to. But since you're in here, I want you to look at it, okay? Is that items included in the sale of the home. Stoves and ovens. If the stove and oven is included, check it. Refrigerators, if you want the refrigerator, then check it. If there's a wine refrigerators, you know, check it. You know, normally they don't leave washers and dryers unless that's something you're offering for. Dishwashers and microwaves that are built in, then check it, okay? Video doorbells, you know, like the video doorbells. Yeah, I know that sometimes they're installed, but if they're installed with tape, the people may take it with them because of how it's installed, all right? If you are expecting to have this video system, then check the box. Security cameras, same thing. Alarm systems, okay? Above ground pools, spas. You know, I've seen people have these nice, beautiful above ground spas, and worst off, you know what they put on MLS? They'll put in there, you know, spa will stay with property, or they'll put, you know, beautiful spa, this and that. Now, here's the problem. Technically, even if on their marketing saying spa to stay with property, if you don't check this box, above ground pool and spa, to be included with this contract, you technically might be saying we don't want the spa, and they will just take the spa with them and sell it. And then all of a sudden your client's thinking they have this $15,000 spa, and you failed to include the spa in your contract. Okay, electric car systems and stations, that's with Tesla vehicles, those are expensive. All right, if you don't check it, they might take it. All right, additional items like playground sets. All right, like you know, certain entertainment centers or built-in mirrors. And one of the things that I wish this would have addressed, but it's not in here, is drapery. Okay, drapery. If there are blinds and if there's shutters that are screwed into the wall, those obviously are attachments. But the drapes that are twisted along the poles, those not necessarily are attachments. if there is anything like that, like drapery, put it in there, okay? Excluded items. If there is junk and the junk is big, for example, I've seen someone buy a home thinking that they're going to remove this big, you know, like container that's in the back of their property. Well, you know, technically a container is just sitting there, and this was a container, you know, the size of containers that they use on trains, and they didn't put excluded. And so when the seller left, they left the container there. These people spent thousands of dollars, you know, removing this container, okay? And it became a fight. So again, if there's something you absolutely don't want, it's like, I don't want this spa, then put excluded, and then on the addendum put to be removed professionally without causing damage, you know, seller's responsible for, okay? So that's, those are things that you have to understand. I'm trying to be very careful because these things happen, okay? All right, allocation of costs. This area is important. All right, this area is important. Okay, first one, natural hazard disclosure. Who pays for that? Typically, the seller will pay for a natural hazard NHD report, okay? Smoke alarms, typically, seller pays for it. Now, there's a Q2 and 3 if there was any other report that you're asking for, okay? Are you asking for a termite report? Are you asking for a home inspection report? Okay, if you're asking for it, you know, or if you know you're gonna do it, so if you know you're gonna do a home inspection, put in there home inspection report and put in there the buyer will pay for that, okay? You are outlining the reports that you're gonna be ordering, okay? Smoke detectors normally is seller, okay? Government required point of sale or inspection reports, okay? Government required point of sale corrective remedial actions, okay? This is where you choose if you want the buyer or seller to pay for that, okay? Escrow fees, who pays that? It could be each pay their own fees or buyer and seller split the fees, okay? Owner's title policy, who pays for that? Buyer's lender's title policy, normally it's buyer that pays for that. That's why there's not really a box to go back and forth. But I like the fact, okay, I like the fact that it's there. The reason why is that in the past, I've seen the buyer confused. The buyer goes, wait, on your contract, you marked that the owner's title insurance policy is paid by the seller. Why am I paying for a title policy? And you're answering them, saying, well, no, that's the CLTA policy. That's the owner's title policy. The buyer's title policy is the ALTA policy, ALTA policy. That's there to protect the lender. But they don't understand that. A lot of buyers won't understand that. At least on here, they see it now, and then it's disclosed to them, okay? County and city transfer taxes, normally, you know, the seller would pay for that, but not always. If you don't mark the box, then if you guys, if you don't check any of these boxes and you don't say the seller's going to pay for it, then default is you both pay for it. So make sure you check the right boxes, okay? Homeowners fees, private transfer fees, all right? Home warranties, if you're asking for who's to pay for the home warranties, okay? And then there's an area for other terms and conditions. These are the allocation of cost and other terms and conditions, all right? So make sure that we mark the right boxes. Again, guys, for those of you who are experienced in writing up these contracts, this is not way too different than the previous contract. It's just, I mean, it's different, trust me, it's different, but it's more organized, okay? But it's more organized, all right? Okay, next area, now we're on page 4, okay? Property, addendas, and advisories, check all that applies. If this was a probate, then you'd put a probate addendum. If it was a manufactured home, you'd put a manufactured addendum. If this property is occupied by a tenant, put the tenant occupied addendum, okay? You know, if you're purchasing it from a tenancy in common, that means you're only purchasing a portion of the property. You put that addendum. If you're purchasing it from a stock, okay, a group, all right, you put that addendum. Other addendums, okay. If this is a short sale, you would check the box short sale addendum, okay. If the property had a septic tank, you put that addendum, all right. So these are certain addendums, okay. Buyer advisories. There are 4 things that are already checked. These 4 things you have to include with your offer, okay? Sometimes, I'll give you an example. When you click on the current California purchase agreement, it will already include the disclosure, the agency disclosure. It will already include the fair housing and discrimination advisory. It will already be connected to the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. It will already have in there the wire fraud, electronic funds transfer advisory. And on the very bottom, it will already have the buyer's inspection advisory, okay, and the Consumer Privacy Act advisory. I hope that when you click on the new contracts coming out next week or the week after, it will have all of these mandatory items already included with it. If it doesn't, then refer to your contract, look at these 4 items right here, okay, Fair Housing Discrimination Advisory, Consumer Privacy Act, Buyer's Inspection Advisory, wire fraud, include in their agency disclosures, include in there the representation of possibly more than one buyer, include those in there if they already hadn't done so already. I think they're gonna already have it in there, but if they don't, make sure that you get it in there. I'm sure they're gonna probably think about that, but I'm just not sure if they're gonna do it or not, okay? So I'm just letting you know, okay? In this contract, there's gonna be things that are checked that you need to include with your offer and have your client sign, DocuSign or sign when you write up the contract, okay? Do not forget these items. All right. Now we go into the verbiage. So all of these items right here are all the details, allocation of cost, verification periods that you need to go by. Keep close track of all of these dates, okay? Now we're gonna go into the verbiage. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time going through the verbiage with you, okay, today, all right? So basically, I'm just gonna go through each item somewhat quickly, okay? So additional terms affecting the purchase price. Okay, this is an area that talks about the initial deposit, any increased deposits, okay, and the retention of deposits. This just talks about what we had spoken about earlier, which is all cash offer. This is an area that talks about the loans, okay, the loan. This is the area that talks about the balance of the purchase price, which is the down payment, okay, all right. This is an area, and I mentioned it to you before, there are limits on credit to the buyer. Remember I mentioned that to you? All right, this just talks about it, okay? There is no automatic adjustment to the purchase price to make up for any difference between the contract credit and the lender allowable credit. So it even talks about that in that, you know, what we spoke about before, it basically says that if you ask for $50,000 in credits, but you're only able to use half of that, it doesn't automatically mean they're gonna reduce the purchase price by $25,000. It's not like that, okay? All right, next it talks about the verification of down payment and closing costs, okay? It talks about, so these are the detailed verbiage that responds to all of the items that you put in here, okay? If you look at the column paragraph number, okay, the items that you put in here will be detailed on these paragraphs. So when I was just talking about credits towards closing costs and so forth, all right, and it talks about here in paragraphs 5, you will then see down here, it will correspond with paragraph 5, and it talks about credits and the loans and so forth. Okay, all right. Buyer stated financing. Okay, all right, what they're going to try to do. Okay, it talks about occupancy and possession. Now, I want everyone to pay attention to this item right here. Okay, all properties are considered to be delivered as is, subject to your client's inspections. Okay, this area I think is very important. It should stand out and be highlighted, but it's not. It says, unless otherwise agreed, the property shall be delivered as is in its present physical condition as a date of acceptance. Okay, the property including pool, spa, landscaping, grounds to be maintained substantially the same condition as its past. All debris and personal property not included sale shall be removed by close of escrow. Buyer, after first delivering seller written notice of removed items within 3 days, may have such items removed and disposed of and bring legal action if it's not been removed by the seller. So this answers something. Number one, I always recommend a home inspection and pictures taken as close to the day that it was accepted as possible. Okay, when you buy a property, you buy it in its present physical condition. Okay, take good photos and make sure you understand the condition of the property when you got the offer accepted. The reason I say that is during the time the client is moving, damage could be done. People could be moving a big bedroom set, and they run, as they're moving the bedroom set, they scrape a big long gash across the wallpaper or across the walls. Then that's damage that the seller needs to fix. What if the seller said, oh, it was already there? Then you can't force them to fix that. Okay, so obviously there's things that are uncovered. Example, they had kids, and the kids had all these posters on the wall. When they took all the posters down, it turned out the kids punched holes in all the walls. Well, obviously, that's something that you found out about on the final inspection. You can ask for those things to be repaired if that's something that was covered up. Okay, so on this area, it says here, if the buyer receives the property, possession of the property, okay, and if there's items that the seller have not removed, okay, the buyer may pay to get those items removed and disposed of and bring legal action, okay, to receive reasonable cost. All right, but the answer is may bring legal action. Normally it's done in the form of small claims court, okay, unless it's like absolutely insane to get rid of all the stuff. So like they leave rooms and rooms of debris and things that like that big old container, then that's different. Okay, buyer strongly advised to conduct investigations of the entire property in order to determine its present condition. Okay, this area is very important in that we always recommend professional home inspection and mold inspections. We always recommend professional home inspections and mold inspections. Okay, mold is a serious issue. It's even more serious if the home was previously used for any type of grow house or anything like that, or if you think that this home is in an area that had any kind of flooding inside, or if there's ever any kind of moisture equals mold. And so not only do I recommend clients get home inspections, but I also recommend clients in areas where there's any risk of mold to get mold inspections done. But at least disclose. If home was former grow house, then make sure you disclose former grow house. Whatever it is, always over disclose, always advise home inspection. If they do not do home inspection, get a waiver signed, okay? All right. Other areas, the seller remain in possession. This is close of escrow. The next area talks about contingency removals. Okay, contingency removals. All right. people don't realize, people ask me a question, is our contingency removal date is coming up. If I don't remove the contingency, can they cancel? The answer is they can't immediately cancel, but if they give you the proper 24-hour, 48-hour notice to perform, and then if you don't perform, they could cancel. So be very careful with your contingency dates, okay? This talks about the loan contingencies, appraisal contingencies, okay, and other contingencies, all right? Removal of contract cancellation. This talks about, you know, if you exercise your rights to cancel, this is how you would do it, okay? The next section in the contract talks about what's included and excluded from the sale of the property, all right? What's included and excluded from the sale of the property, okay? Since you are rereading the contract, then I'm not going to read this section for you, all right? But it's important. Now, I am going to mention something. One of the latest topics that's come up quite a bit is solar, all right? Solar. Some solar is owned solar, and some solar is leased solar, okay? If you're representing a seller and the seller does not own their solar, then make sure that you disclose that this is a lease and that buyer to assume the lease for the solar, all right? Or the seller will have to pay off that solar with their proceeds if that's not clear. So again, some solar is owned, some solar is leased, okay? Now, seller sometimes has solar on their home, and the solar is added to the property taxes of their home through some type of government financing program for solar. If that's the case, like an evergreen program or something like that, okay, you got to disclose that. When clients are paying, when buyers are paying extra for something that's attached to the home, all right, they need to know about it. So make sure they understand that, okay? See, it says leased or liened items right here, and normally pertains to solar, okay? All right. Next one, items excluded from the sale, all right? Now this item number 10 talks about the allocation of costs, okay? Talks about home warranty. Next one talks about the disclosures, all right? Talks about different disclosures. Next one talks about how soon you have to get back return signed copies, termination rights, withholdings of taxes, Megan's Law. So these are all the different disclosures, okay? Item 12 talks about what the client's allowed to inspect, okay? And what they're not allowed to inspect, okay? Okay, all right, what they're allowed to inspect, all right? Now, do you have to give a copy of the inspection to the seller? Okay, it says here, either remove contingency by a time specified 3 days after receipt of any investigation report, whichever later, give seller at no cost complete copies of such reports obtained by buyer, which obligation should survive the termination of this agreement. So basically people say, well, hey, I paid for this home inspection. Do I have to give a copy to the seller? Yeah, the answer is, yeah, they allowed you to go in there and do the home inspection. It's their home. And so, yeah, if they allowed you to do the inspection, then you got to give them a copy of it, okay? All right. Okay. This is just the indemnity that says if buyer goes in there, they'll hold the seller harmless if let's say they have a home inspection come in there, home inspector ends up destroying the seller's property, you know, the buyer will indemnify and protect the seller from any kind of damage they do when they're inspecting the property. Next one just talks about title and vesting. Okay, how are you going to take title? Talks about ALTA policy, CLTA policy. The next one, item number 14, again, talks about the removal of contingencies and the process in which contingencies are removed, the process in which the seller has rights to cancel if the buyers fail to remove the contingencies. All right. It does talk about, notices to perform and so forth. Okay. This is where it talks about notice to perform. We'll give 2 days notice to perform. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, they could cancel. Okay. There's so read that area. Next area talks about repairs, final verification of property. Okay, prorations for property taxes. Okay, it talks about the compensation to the brokers and agents, which is our agents. The next area talks about joint escrow instructions. Okay, again, some of these areas, obviously there's just too much to go over this minute, but please read. Okay, read these areas. Okay, I've read them. Read them, and a lot of these areas are not much different than what was on there in the past. Okay, all right. Okay. There's an assignment clause in here. It's something that is sort of new to this contract. It says here, buyer shall have the right to assign all of the buyer's interest in this agreement to buyer's own trust or a wholly owned entity of their own. Okay, but it doesn't mean they could assign it to another buyer. All right, so they could assign it to themselves if they own a trust or they own their own entity that's owned only by them, but they can't assign this contract to a stranger or someone that's not themselves. Okay, technically. All right, so let's keep going. These are just definitions of what things mean. All right, these are terms and conditions of offer. That means that it says here, who has to sign the offers. It says that time is the essence, that everything is done in a timely fashion. Okay, the next area talks about legal authorized signer. Basically says that, hey, if you're buying this as an entity, you have to have the correct person on the entity and the proper entity addendums in there to say who's authorized to sign. This area talks about liquidated damages, arbitration of disputes, mediation. Okay, again, it just talks about the expiration of offer, but we spoke about that at the top. Okay, the representative capacity disclosure, if it's being signed by some kind of entity, the signatures of buyer, possible signatures of seller. Okay, and then of course, if the sellers were to counter it, they would check this box, seller counter offer, and then, or if this is a backup offer, then they check backup offer, and then the seller would sign here. Okay, the next section is again to put our company information. All right, our company information, how we prefer to communicate between agents is right here. Okay, all right, and then this is who we're using for escrow company, and we are done with an overview of the contract. Again, everyone, I didn't want to take I did not want to take a full 2 hours going over this contract, because an hour and a half is quite a bit already. Okay, but as you can see, this is a pretty different contract than the one we're used to. All right, they do have quite a few updates. I think it's a better contract. I think it's more organized contract. I'm glad to see it, but it's going to take all of you some time to get used to it. What I say is that from now on, any contract you see, spend a little bit more time looking at it. Make sure that you don't miss anything, because at the end of the day, our job as agents is to be professionals at this contract. Okay, because these are the things that the courts are going to look at if the buyer and seller are fighting over anything. If you make any kind of mistake on these contracts and it causes harm to buyer and seller, it's going to be a problem, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so make sure you all spend a good amount of time going over the contract. You know, in general, there's a lot of things that are the same about this contract and the previous one, but then there's a lot of things that have been organized differently. Okay, if there is anything that any of you see that is confusing to you, or you have any questions, or things that you think that we need to know as a group, then feel free, email me, share it with us, and I'll bring it up on the next contract meeting. Since we're all together here, again, I want to give everyone an update. You know, it is December. We're going to have some incredible trainings coming up early part of next year after the holiday break. There's going to be some incredible things coming up to help you get more production. There's going to be incredible things coming up to help you better market yourself and so forth. Okay, please, guys, learn the Berkshire Hathaway back offices. Use the marketing center from Berkshire Hathaway. Learn that all over again. Use technology to get your marketing out, because, you know, these days social media is big. These days online advertising is big. These days there's so many places for you to post and put great marketing material, and your marketing center from Berkshire Hathaway is incredible. Use it. Okay, there are new pieces coming out every single day for you to use. Let's make an extra effort to do social media marketing using our back office platform for you to do that in 2022. We don't know when everything's going to get back to normal with all these new variants of COVID coming out. So you got to become professionals of being online, okay? At the same time, you know, the more you're able to get yourself out there online, the more clients you're going to get. All right. Again, I want to thank everyone for being on the meeting today. I wish I could have seen you for the Christmas party, but to make sure that everyone is safe and we're not spreading any kind of possible viruses with each other, you know, we had no choice but to postpone it. But again, you know, I'm glad you're able to be in the meeting today. This meeting will be recorded, so we'll be able to post it hopefully very soon so you can watch this again. Please download it from the CAR site. Work on filling it out. If anyone has any questions whatsoever, please reach out to me via email or text, and I will respond to you immediately. All right, again, everyone, thank you for being on the call and training today. Hope everyone have a safe and wonderful rest of the year and holidays. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Robert.
Guys, have a good one.
Thanks, Robert.